but everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing its
the Tampa market. Rise.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the horn of Africa.
of the local party.
I was muted. All right, so good morning, family. Once again, this is Frank. I just want to welcome you all this morning to the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series aspect of WCC, as we usually do every Friday, 10 a.m. to whenever time we stop. So I just want to say thank you this morning for coming on. As you come on, please share. We have some information to share. So before we start, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. I know you have some busy schedule, but hey, you want to be here this morning as we build this platform, and also we build on what is so important for African people around the world. So today's topic is called the myth of foreign aid to Africa. The myth to African nation. All right. The myth of foreign help to African nation. The myth of Western charitable organization to Africa. The myth of Western government working with African government or involved. The myth behind it. The myth of Western country creating democracy in African nation. The myth all involved in what we're about to discuss today. The myth of foreign aid to the African nation, to the African continent. Is it Africa that is providing aid to America, to the West? I think today, the way things have been unfolding, but now if African people have not realized it, that it is the other way around, Africa is the one giving aid to the United States. That is the fact. Africa is the one actually giving aid. Africa is the one actually who have been giving aid to the United States. Africa is the one who have been giving aid to the European nations, Great Britain, France, and Germany, and the rest. Africa is the one, or the continent, that have been giving aid to the rest of the world. All right. Now, just because the United States or foreign media come out to say Africa is the poorest continent in the world, that does not mean Africa is not the continent that is giving aid to them. That does not mean they are the one giving aid to Africa. Listen, folks, pay attention to what is going on currently around the world. The European leaders are crying in tears. You may not see the tears, but they are actually crying in tears and begging African nation or the African continent or African leaders to be on their side. They are begging the continent of Africa to be on their side, because it have come to a point, whosoever loses Africa, your nation, your continent is done. It has come to a point, any nation that is not part of Africa, you are done. And the Western nations, they don't want to tell their citizens that. All right? They don't want to tell their citizens about the importance of Africa. And we are going to tell their citizen that it is Africa rather giving aid to you people. We are going to inform their citizen that you are third world country. Africa is not the third world country. The United States and the entire Europe, they are the third world country. That is the message today. Now, let me begin by saying first, before we can get into this, let me say this. The question then becomes, first of all, why is Africa in dying needs, all right, that they have been portrayed? Now, why is Africa, or why are African nations mostly are the nation in debt? Why is it so? It derived from somewhere. It came from somewhere, okay? It came from somewhere because in the 1960s, or when Africa was getting independent, African nation had no debt. We did not owe the United States. We did not owe IMF. We did not owe the Barclays Bank in England. We did not owe those people. Why it is that we owe them? Why it is that we owe IMF? Why it is that we African nation owe the United States? Where did it come from? It came from somewhere. And that is what we are here to discuss today. Now, the question then becomes, why it is that the United States is lacking behind? Why it is that today the United States is begging African nations to be on her side? Why it is that today the United States is trying to compete with Africa, with China in Africa? Why it is today that the United States is not a giant in Africa, but rather the United States is pointing finger at China to be the giant in Africa? Why it is so? That is what we are here to discuss today. Does that mean that China was on the African continent before the United States? Absolutely not. Then why it is that the United States is lacking? Why it is that nations on the African continent, or the citizens, right, favor China over the United States? These are the questions we are asking. Why it is, and we want the United States to answer us. Why it is people on the African continent favor China over England. Why it is? Because England been on the African continent, the European nation been on the African continent since 1884. But why it is today, people favor China in Africa over the United States, over European nation, or over France? Why it is? The problem is, you shall reap what you sowed. The United States is reaping, or is harvesting, what she sowed on the African continent and in African nation. The European nations are getting today what they sow. The seed they sow, it is what they are harvesting today. Oh yes. The United States have huge investment in Africa, and those are the investment we're going to name today. China have huge investment in Africa. Those are the investment we're going to name today. The European nation have huge investment in Africa, and those are the investment we are going to name today. And then see why people favor China in Africa over the United States and over the European nation. That is what we are here today. Folks, welcome. This is WCC. I am your host. I'm Frank Mauba, the host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series. Before we start, I just want to say thank you all for joining in, and thank you all for being part of our Patreon and contributing to this platform and to this movement. The link is posted. You can send a donation there, or you can go on our website and send in your donation, or you can become part of our Patreon. We are here to do this. No retreat and no surrender. Forward ever and backward never. Now, let's get into the first discussion here. The first thing we want to do here is we want to look at Barack Obama, another Negro, another horse Negro. All right. So in the United States whenever white America want to get black people or African people involved into something, they use the few Negro people like Obama. They use the bourgeoisie. If you didn't know that, Obama is a bourgeoisie. All right. They use the bourgeoisie to go in to speak or to convince African people to be part of an entity or something that they will not benefit from. All right. And I previously said Obama, he's very charismatic, he's very outspoken. All right. He's one of the most brilliant US president ever, okay, to rule this country. That you can't take it from him. That you have to give him it. All right. He's one of the most brilliant and influential US president ever to live and to rule this country. He's very eloquent. He knows how to speak. He knows words. He knows how to convince black population. So they usually use him. All right. So today they are also using him on the African continent. You know, when he became president, people respected him, people honor him, and they thought, especially in Kenya, where he's from, they thought he was going to do something better there. All right. But not knowing they was going to use him. And the first project Obama carried in Kenya was to go preach about LGBT, to go make African people to become gay. All right. Sorry to say this, folks. This is a revolutionary channel. All right. I'm not hurting nobody feeling. To become gay. So he went there. That was his first message in Kenya, right? Trying to convince the Kenyan president that the only way, your presidency can become vital, or your government can become so important to the world or to the United States, is to create give avenue to gay. By the way, in Africa, we allow people to live. All right. It's not everything that we put into law, but you just got to respect our culture and values, period, to that. All right. So if anybody want to experience what they call LGBT, they can come in America. That's American culture. That's American way of life. Just because you do it here, that doesn't mean you can do it in other places. Okay. There are some things, if you want to gain experience in it, you go to Africa. All right. And you go learn the culture and gain some experience. So equally so, if people in the world or any part of Africa want to experience that, they can come to America and come and experience it. That's a good life in America. Just because it's good here, that doesn't mean it's good on the African continent or for the African people. That's the bottom line. Just because it worked for you, that doesn't mean it worked for other people. So Obama went there to go preach. So that was the kind of development Obama carried. Oh, listen. Yes, the United States have development in Africa. So that's the kind of development Obama carried on the African continent. That was the message. All right. That was one of the first development Obama carried on the African continent, to go tell African people or African leaders to be gay and lesbian, LGBT plus Q. Now, the plus, what I mean is that you can also marry your animal. You can also marry dog. That is what they call it, LGBTQ plus. The plus is you can marry dog. You can have sexual intercourse with dog, D-O-G. That's what the plus is for. So that's the kind of message or first development Obama carried on the African continent. Now they are using it again to come back to convince African people about so-called development or investment. But I see, first of all, now, again, let me say this. Those of you that may watch this video and you have connection to African leaders, all right, pass this message on to them. Now, some of these messages we bring is not from us. It's being actually given to us by our ancestor. Okay, so some of these messages we bring is not that we just gather and get the information out of nowhere and bring it. Some of these information literally come to us to present it. All right. And if you look at the pattern of presentation we've been doing recently, you will get to understand where we're heading, all right, especially when it comes to today's presentation and looking at how the war has been unfolding, and begging African people, inviting, and in fact, as we speak currently, I think today is the 13th, right? The secretary for the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, all right, okay, she's going to be traveling today to the African continent. Specifically, she's going to be to Senegal, the Gambia, and South Africa. Those three places she's going there. First of all, South Africa is still a colonial, how they call it, nation, right? And Zambia, the reason why she's going to Zambia, recently you had the so-called U.S. Africa Summit in the U.S. here, and Zambia was one of those nations that sold to the United States by giving out their mineral resources, right? Where the United States told them they were going to build electric car for them along with DRC Congo, right? So that is why she's traveling to Zambia, Senegal, and South Africa. All right, so maybe she might also travel to DRC, or when she come back, that will be the next year, or another person may go there. All right, so she's traveling there today. So some of these messages that we're bringing it out so that it can reach to those African leaders. Because at the end of the day, they're still going to meet these people. We can't stop them. They're going to meet them. But when you're meeting them, you already know what they are coming for and what you need to meet them for, what you need to put forth to the table. All right? When they come, they're going to come, or they're going to call you. You're still going to go. Again, anyway, let me get into it. Let me get into it, and we'll elaborate on it more. So we're going to look at Barack Obama messages, and we're going to educate Mr. Barack Obama from this topic today. We're going to educate him, and we're going to remind him of the kind of development he did when he was the U.S. president, when he had the opportunity to do tangible development. We're going to remind him of the kind of development he did on the African continent, that what he's saying here today, it is not of his heart, and he's not serious, and he's not real, and he's not truthful. We're just going to remind him the kind of development he did during his administration, okay, as a U.S. president. And we're going to let him know, Mr. President or former president, we're listening to you not. Maybe we should have done, or we did in the past, but this current time, we're listening to you not, because you are not real.
I want to thank Secretary Blinken, the Prosper Africa Initiative, the Tony Alamello Foundation, and Google for bringing this group together. And I want to recognize all the young innovators who are here tonight. When I hosted the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit back in 2014, I made a commitment to invest in the next generation of African leaders and give them the support they need to make their dreams a reality. My message to Africa's young people remains the same today.
First of all, that makes something clear here. The U.S. Africa Summit leadership that he had, Obama initiated this whole thing first, right? He had in 2014. It was never fruitful, and I think we already talked about it. Like I said, our forefathers bring these things to us, okay? Sometimes it just come, and I take pen and paper and write it down. Sometimes I present some of these things in my dream, and then when I wake up and then write it down and check it out and do research on it and bring it. All right. So we talked about this already. All right. About the so-called Obama U.S. 2014 Leadership Summit with African nation. It was fruitless. It did not yield anything to the African continent. African nation did not benefit from it, but rather the U.S. was able to exploit African nations, all right, through their so-called host Negro called Barack Obama. And now they are using him, and he's sitting here saying what he did in 2014, it was fruitful. It was never fruitful. We saw nothing. It did not give us what technology. In fact, the technology we're experiencing on the African continent all came from China. Okay? It is because of China involvement, and we're going to talk about these things today. So President Obama, what he did in 2014, it did not yield any meaningful things to the African continent, but rather it was exploited and it caused chaos and death on the African continent. We just want to remind you first in the first place. Let's continue with this.
You succeed, your country succeed, and that creates more opportunities for everyone. Right now, the median age of people living in Africa is 19 years old. Africa's young people are harnessing new technologies, advancing new solutions to old challenges, and influencing global culture like never before. And U.S. businesses are taking notice. Over the last 5 years, U.S. investors have closed more than 500 deals in Africa, totaling about $30 billion. They've done it because they believe in Africa's boundless human capacity. And it's especially impressive when you consider that American investment in Africa startups was a fraction of what it is today just a few years ago. If all of us up our game, this will only be the beginning. That's why the U.S. government is partnering with businesses and investors to connect people and industries in the U.S. and Africa. They're helping companies build out their supply chains and mobilize investment that will strengthen African markets and help combat the climate crisis. But business doesn't operate in a vacuum. You also need responsive governments, stable institutions, and potential customers with money to spend. That's why I'm glad that many organizations, including the Obama Foundation, are also supporting all kinds of young leaders across the continent. Not just entrepreneurs, but leaders in civil society and the public sector as well. All of us will keep doing everything we can to help you succeed. And my hope is that when you do succeed, you'll use your power to help address some of the biggest challenges of our time, from climate change to global health to food security. I know some of you already are. And anyone looking for investment opportunities, I encourage you to look to Africa because something special is happening there. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the evening.
All right. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Former President, by saying if anybody looking for investment opportunity, they should look to Africa. Thank you for that message. But we want to remind you, you were the same person yesterday when Muammar Gaddafi, we will keep reminding you, when Muammar Gaddafi came out with very initiative on the African continent in terms of development and becoming self-sufficient continent or nations in Africa. Were you not the same person that went and killed him for his brilliant idea? Were you not the same person that went and killed Gaddafi, Mr. President? Were you not the same person? You along with Hillary Clinton, where Hillary Clinton said we went, we saw, we killed, and we conquered, and she was happy, and she was jubilating. Were you not the same person with all the brilliant idea Gaddafi had for Africa? Were you not the same person where Gaddafi wanted for Africa to have her own satellite? Were you not the same person when you killed him? Where Gaddafi wanted for Africa to have her own currency. Were you not the same person, President Barack Obama, when it killed him? Gaddafi wanted to pave road, right? Linking all African nations. Were you not the same person when it killed him? Gaddafi wanted for Africa to have her own IMF. Were you not the one when they killed him? We're doing that development. Now you said for Africa to engage in such development, right? You need a responsible government. Well, Gaddafi not responsible. Today, say you kill Gaddafi, Mr. President or former president. Have you created a responsible government in Libya? These are the kind of development you have done in Africa. We're going to remind you today, America have a lot of development. You have done a lot of development in Africa. All right? And we're going to bring proof today. We're not just speaking. All right? Since you killed Gaddafi, with all those brilliant ideas he had, Mr. President or former president, have you gone in Libya to provide a responsible government, because you said Gaddafi was never responsible because Gaddafi wanted to have, or how they call it, to unite the entire African continent. All right? You said Gaddafi was not responsible because of that idea, you kill him. You said Gaddafi was not responsible because Gaddafi wanted for the entire African nation or continent to have one currency. You said Gaddafi was not responsible. You kill him because of that. All right? Now, Gaddafi wanted to have what? To trade in gold. Then, all right? You said Gaddafi was not responsible again. You kill him for that idea because it was a threat to America and to the colonial, how they call it, nation. All right? To the imperialist nation. You said that was a threat. You kill him. And up to now, you have not created an, how they call it, a responsible government or responsible institution in Libya. Today, Libya is still suffering. Today, the Libyans are regretting, Mr. President. Those are the kind of investment the United States have done in Africa. Why did you kill Gaddafi? If you are coming with this idea that if anybody want to invest in Africa, or if anybody want to invest, why you didn't say if anybody are looking for investment opportunity, they should come to America? Because America does not have the resources. Because America does not have the economy where people got to come and invest. Why are you leaving America and not calling people to come and invest? Why didn't you say if anybody looking for investment opportunity, they should go to Europe? Why didn't you say that? Because they don't have the resources. They don't have it. So why did you kill Gaddafi? What up to now have you not instilled a stable government or institution in Libya? Why? Mr. President, because you killed Gaddafi, you took Africa back 10 to 15 years. You took Africa back, or you have taken Africa back. Because if Gaddafi would have been alive today, I think the stage Africa is in, it could have been more than that stage. But you killed this man. The investment America have done on the African continent is to create dictator on the African continent. That's the kind of investment you have done on the African continent. And the kind of investment you have done on the African continent also is to go against democratic institutions and kill them directly or indirectly. Put sanction on them because they do not agree to American policy. That's the kind of institution or development you have done on the African continent. And that is why African nations do not want the United States. Because that's the kind of development, that's the kind of policy you have done on the African continent. You sanction African nation who does not agree to your self-interest and policy. That's the kind of development you have done on the African continent by sanctioning African nation and individual Africans that do not agree or see your policy toxic to their nation. That's the kind of development you have done on the African continent. You honor man African government. You honor man African leadership. That's the kind of development you have done on the African continent. How dare you writing African nation or president or leaders telling them to resign? That's the kind of development you have done on the African continent. Looking at African leaders and telling them your time has come, you have to resign. Which one of the African leaders have ever pointed fingers on any American leaders or government and tell them you have to resign because in your country you have inequality, you have racism, you have discrimination, so you have to resign? But no, that's the kind of development you have done on the African continent. So you will reap what you sowed. You have to experience what third world country is. Europe have to experience what third world country is. There's nothing wrong with that. If other nations can go through it, if other people can go through it, why not the United States can go through it? Why not Europe can go through it? You have to go through it. If you found it in pleasure, calling other nations terror, if you find it by pleasure by calling other nations shithole, if you find it by pleasure by calling other nation or citizen insignificant, why not? Why not experience the same thing? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a third world country. Nothing wrong with that. So it is fine if another nation call America in the future a third world country. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people leaving from here and going to Africa, right? Finding greener pasture. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with Africa having immigration system where they have to scrape. All right, they have to scrape you, look at up between your legs. Okay, whether you got disease or you got sickness, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. If Africa is to do it, so be it. There's nothing wrong with that. If Africa is to have an immigration system, right, where we will deny you visa, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. If you can do it, other nations can do it. If other people can experience it, why not you can experience it? You need to experience it. That's life. That's life. When your time comes, hey, take it. When other people time come, hey, let them take it. So if it is Africa time, let Africa take it. That's life. So these are the kind of development Mr. President or Barack Obama, America have done on the African continent. And we're not just saying that, we're going to bring proof today that these are the things you've been doing and why you are lacking up. But right, if anybody is at this time period, right, I think it should be China saying that we have to find an alternative to compete with America on the African continent. It should be China or other nations saying we have to have an alternative to compete with Europe on the African continent. But it is a shame to you, America, to even say we have to find a way to compete with China on the African continent. That's a shame. To even come out to say it. To even come out at this time asking African nations, begging African nations to choose side. That's a shame on you, America. Very, very shame. We got to let you know that's a shame because you've been on the African continent before China. You've been there 100 years plus before China went in. What were you doing there? At this time, you begging, you competing with China. And hold on, let me put something out here. Let's go to the next area. Let's put something out before it be like we're just speaking something here. All right? Yeah, let me pull something out here before it's like I'm just speaking off my head. Now, we have an article here, right? It says U.S. trade and investment in Africa. Wow. U.S. trade and investment in Africa. Wow. Folks, isn't the other way around? Africa trade and investment in U.S.? It should be the other way around. Because the United States economy boom, right? Since the 1600s, it was because of Africa. European trade or how they call it, economy booming, all right, in Europe there, it was because of Africa. All right? So Africa is the one that have been giving aid to the United States and to the European nation. But okay, we will take what they say here and we will go and we'll look at it, right? So they say U.S. trade and investment in Africa. Sounds so nice, right? Now, look at the African continent. What sort of investment do we have in Africa that we can say this is U.S. investment? No, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. What kind of investment do we have in Africa that we can actually point to? We say, yes, these are the investment. Okay? These are the things America have done in Africa that have boomed the economy of Africa, that have invested in African youth, in the African masses. I'm waiting. I want to see it. I'm waiting. What are those investments? We are waiting for President Barack Obama or maybe Joseph Arab Biden to tell us the investment the United States have in Africa that have improved the livelihood of African people on the African continent since 1884. I'm waiting. All right. So this article here was written by someone. It's right here. I'm not going to read about the person, but I'm going to start here. Let's start from down here. All right. So let's see. We're going to read a little bit here, right? By the way, this person that wrote this article, right? He gave the flaw of America, why America today have failed on the African continent. All right. Why the European nation have failed on the African continent. But he gave solution to America, not to Africa. He brought suggestion. He brought a suggestion to America what America should do to reverse, okay, the interests of African people, okay, on the African continent for America. What America should do. But it's not easy. It's not just because he wrote it, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Because you have wasted millions of African blood. Even as we speak, DRC Congo. Last week, we talked about it. The same M23 rebel that the United States is accusing Paul Kagame for, it is the same United States that funded this same M23 rebel with finances, ammunition to destroy African life. So that trust is not going to be easy. It's not just going to come overnight or bread and butter. It's not going to come. That trust is going to come until America can experience what they call third world country. Folks, the only time to go in to help someone if they are drowning, you have to wait, let them drown first. If they have not drowned and you go in, you might end up drowning because their whole weight, they will fall on you. So you have to wait, let them drown. When they drown, the moment you go in, you stretch your hand, they have no power. Now you will hold them and try to control them and bring them offshore. So if we are to come to the rescue of the United States or Europe, let them drown, let them have a taste of what suffering is. Let's continue here. The writer says, advancing trade, investment, and technology in Africa offer numerous economic growth and increased prosperity for both regions, and is best realized through value-based foreign policy and a market-based model of development, education, and accountability. Now, let me make this clear. The United States have never been transparent to the African continent. This is not a hate. This is a revolutionary infatuation educational lecture series. It's a revolutionary channel. We are unapologetic of what we say. The United States have never ever been transparent to the African nations when it comes to partnership. The United States have never valued Africans when it comes to partnership. The United States have never ever valued African contribution or suggestion when it comes to partnership. But let's continue here. The writer mentions something like market-based model development. All right? Looking at the American economy or market, what have they created on the African continent? Nothing. Let's continue here. There is no better time to accelerate U.S. trade and investment in Africa than now. First of all, let me make this clear. At the beginning of independent African nations, we're going to see all of that today here. Well, how did Africa get loan? We're going to see it today here. How did it start? Okay, we're going to bring it here today. Now, this is the kind of language the United States and her ally, the European nation, have been using to get the mind of African investment, development, cooperation, mutual, sustainable, all of these things. These are words they have spoken times without number, uncountable, but they have done nothing to live up to this, to their expectation of what they say. Let's continue here. There is no better time to accelerate U.S. trade and investment in Africa than now. Despite Africa's tremendous economic potential, the U.S. has lost, I didn't say it, the U.S. has lost substantial ground to traditional and emerging partners, especially China. Now, folks, everything we see the U.S. doing, fighting here and there for, is about China, Russia, and other emerging power coming out. And let me say this to African nation or to African leaders. If you do not want to become part of the world superpower, and this is not hate, if you do not want to become part of the world superpower, listen to America. Follow America. This is not hate. All right? This is the plain truth. America is not going to make Africa to be part of the superpower. At the end of the day, you're still going to be controlled by America. You're not going to become part of the world superpower where you have voice or you have control in what you say or do, or to affect the livelihood of your people. All is about what? Resources. This is not to say I'm speaking for Russia or China or how do you call it, Australia or this or that. I'm speaking for Africa. I'm speaking for Africa, for African leaders to stand, for African leaders to unite the African continent, for African leaders to take things into their own hand. Do not allow the United States, do not allow any colonizer, do not allow any enslaver, do not allow any imperialist, do not allow any oppressor to come and tell you this is the road we need to take, this is the step we need to take. It is in your favor and it's not going to be in your favor. These are people. From time to time, they have created policy to make sure to keep you down. These are the same people that criticize China and told China, the policy you are taking in Africa is not good. It's not in our favor. These are the same people that told China, the policy you're taking to Africa by helping Africa to develop, by helping Africa to rise, by helping Africa to have a place is bad. These are the same people that told China. Then how can they come today to tell you they have a better option than China? When you hear the United States saying today by 2050, certain percentage of the world population going to be African, it's not because of the investment the United States have done in Africa or Europe. It's because what they have seen China doing in Africa. It is because where Africa have come, they see no light of exploiting the African nation. They see to it that the resources that they have, it cannot sustain 10, 15, 20 years, resources that they have exploited for Africa. If they don't find a way to keep adding up to that resources, but rather Africa isolate their resources from them, what they have stolen and have in reserve, it will not serve them for 10, 15, 20 years. Let's continue here. So you African leaders, sit down there and wait for the United States to come and tell you what to do. They will bring out the same colonial policy. Let's continue. Let's continue here. So they say, despite Africa's tremendous economic potential, the U.S. has lost substantial ground to traditional and emerging partners, especially China. Indeed, wide recent trend indicates that the U.S. engagement with the regions has fallen. Of course, it has fallen because the United States have involved herself in mean activities, killing African leaders directly or indirectly, censuring African nation who does not agree to her policy, creating proxy war on the African continent, like we saw recently in Ethiopia, supporting the TPLF rebel, creating instability on the African continent. Those are the kind of development the United States have done on the African continent. And that is why African people do not trust the United States. And that is why the United States is going to be the least on African list in terms of partnership. When African men say they don't trust you, when African men say they have taken their trust from you, indeed they do. Because it takes a long time before they make decision. I don't know why it is, but African people, it takes long time before they make decision. They can be stupid, they can be dumb, you can use them, you can insult them, you can tell them everything what you want to tell them. But when they turn their back from you, they do it. In the United States, we all know regret by turning our back. And we are going to turn it. We will come back. But until you can understand your role that you have done against African people systematically, our back will remain turned until you can realize it. You have not yet run. Keep running to the African continent. It's not something you're going to find easy. They continue. It has fallen, and it said it has not and shall not cede its relationship with the region to other power. Of course, we're going to give it to other power. Because you know what? During the independence of African nations, it was other power that came in, like Russia. Where in the world, and do we say, or can you find African nations owe in debt to Russia? But yes, African nations owe huge debt to the United States, huge debt to Europe. It was the same Russia that came to the aid of African nations to gain independence. From who? The United States. From who? From European nation. From who? The colonizer. From who? The enslaver. So today, if Africa is talking about competing even with the United States, it was because of China. When China was not there, African people was not talking about competing with the United States. You were there, Europe were there, exploiting our resources, taking advantage of us, calling our names. Let's continue here. Now, importantly, the U.S. can build a new regional momentum. So first of all, what caused the U.S. to fall back that the U.S. have to build a new momentum? First of all, let me declare, the U.S. have been building momentum upon momentum, but everything has been oppressive. So that is why we are not going to trust the United States with this new momentum or approach that she has taken or she's taking. Let's continue here. Let's go down here a little bit. Now I say trade and investment are not just about money or prosperity. They also bring and support peace, stability, and security. Now, again, where in Africa the United States has support or gave support to peace and stability? Recent one, Ethiopia. United States did not support peace, but they support the war by supporting TPLF rebel. It was the same African nations that went in for an agreement to stop that war. That is just a message to the African leaders. Only African people can solve African problem. Not the colonizer, not the oppressor, not the imperialists. They are there to loot. In fact, they are there to create what? To make the African continent to have chaos, and they capitalize on those chaos to exploit us. They have not carried peace in DRC Congo. In fact, they are the one also, and we have found in research, they are the one also supporting the rebels and the chaos in Africa, let's say in DRC Congo, along with Great Britain. Once a colonizer is a colonizer. Once an oppressor is an oppressor. I watched a movie about World War III. That's the World War II, sorry. There was a Russian, and he was a Marine. And the Marine were fighting. And they set an ambush, and in short, the Russian army fell in an ambush. And there was one guy who had the opportunity to massacre all these Russian army. And this guy, he was a Marine, but a Russian. So he did not kill those Russians. He allowed those Russians to fall in an ambush, and they walked freely and they went. And when talking, they questioned him about why he didn't do it, his answer was, once a Russian is still a Russian. That means just because I'm in America or I am a Marine in the American army or a Marine, that does not mean I am not a Russian or I should go and kill my fellow Russian. Once a Russian is still a Russian. Once a colonizer is still a colonizer. Once an oppressor is still an oppressor. And we're going to see that here today. They have not changed, and they will never change. Let's continue here. They say African economic transformation and business potential are more substantial than most people think. The world next growth market. Now, let me make this clear again. Just because they are saying the world next growth market, that does not mean it was because of the involvement of Europe and the United States. No. It's the involvement of other nations like China and African themselves, seeing potential in themselves, waking up and saying that this is our continent. No one can make this continent a better place other than African, and other than African vigorously standing out and saying no to the West. If not, America will have worked with all those democratic leaders that they assassinated. America would have worked with Petro Lumumba, but America participated in assassination of DRC Congo leader Petro Lumumba. They also participated in the assassination of Thomas Sankara. Those are all leaders who believe in democracy and freedom for their people. Those are all responsible leaders. Barack Obama, but you kill those people. Let's continue here. Consider a hopeless continent in 2000. Now, they are the ones saying that in 2000, the continent was hopeless, right? But you've been on the African continent since 1884. So with all the contribution, according to you, with all the aid, why in 2000 the African continent was hopeless? Let's continue. The economists, Africa has seen two big cumulative successive decades of its existence in the 21st century. Trade in and with Africa has given 300% in the last decade. Overperforming global average, 196%. It has become the home to many of the world's fastest growing economy, offering unique opportunity for U.S. trade and investment. Africa is the one feeding these people here. Moreover, Africa has tremendous economic potential and offer rewarding opportunity for local and global partners looking for new market and long-term investment, while some of the highest return, but also the potential to foster economic growth, diversification, job creation, including for women and youth, and improve general welfare. Now, in fact, Africa have been, Africa have been the hub for economic growth centuries, years back. Even before 1600, Africa was the hub for economic growth and partnership, trade in the world before the 1600. And Africa is the continent that have made America the way it is today. Africa is the continent that have made Europe the way it is today. So how dare you even talk about emerging market? No, Africa have just been taken advantage of. Africa was just being looted by Europe and America. That is why it slowed down the development of Africa. That is why you see Africa today, it is being underdeveloped, because you stole our population and enslaved our population, took advantage of them. They built your country with no pay, but rather you pay those people who took advantage of them, but rather you give reparation to those people who took advantage of them. So that is why Africa is like that today. But Africa have been the cornerstone of the world since the creation of men, since the creation of the world, since the creation of breath or life. Africa has been the center of the world. The only reason why Africa is like that is because you took advantage of us. And it took decades, it took years, it took centuries for Africa to regain her energy, to grow, and to be at this point it is. And Europe and America are falling because Africa have waken up, or is waking up, and you are no longer finding it easy to exploit the African continent. If you are finding it easy to exploit the African continent, you, Mr. President, you wouldn't have sent out messages to anybody to say if anybody want to invest invest, they should find Africa as a place to go invest in. No, you only saying that because you are finding it hard to exploit African people. Let's continue here. Let's go down a little bit. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So let's go down here because we have other article to look up. Let's read down here. The rise of global partnership and competition between traditional and new players, an opportunity for the U.S. to build on its sustainable competitive advantage. Now, the United States have no competitive advantage in Africa because you had the opportunity and you wasted it. Okay, let's say this. All right. Let's say slavery was gone, right? Okay, we take that. Now, let's say colonialism, right, was gone, right? We get independent. We take that. But what happened after independence? What happened after independence? You still suppress us. You kill our leaders who want a betterment for Africa. The recent one, Gaddafi, you kill him. What competitive advantage you have in Africa over China or even over Russia? Chinese have not gone in to kill any African leaders. Chinese have not gone in to undermine any African leader or to sanction any African nation or leaders. Russia have not gone in to undermine any African nation or to kill any African leaders. We are yet to hear it or to see it. Maybe they have done it, but we haven't seen it yet. But you take it as a pleasure to undermine African leaders, to kill African leaders who say no to American foreign policy, to undermine and assassinate African leaders who want to take the stand to say, no, my country got to be like this too. Recent one, Burkina Faso. When Burkina Faso decided to take her resources, what did it do? You blocked Burkina Faso from coming to the so-called leadership summit you had here. And you said you are not going to give aid to Burkina Faso because Burkina Faso decided to take our resources to make it national. Burkina Faso decided to take our mines for foreign corporation. That's the kind of relationship you have built with Africa. That's the kind of development you have built in Africa. Oh yes, the United States have development in Africa. That's the kind of development you have built in Africa. So whose side should we take? China or the United States? Russia or the United States? Russia or how they call it? Great Britain or Europe? Which side should we take? Let's continue here. In 2009, China became the region prime trading. Now, when they say prime, what do you mean? Current. Right? Current. Leading. Active. Okay? China became the prime trading partner in the world. In fact, between 2006 to 2016, China trade with Africa surged, with importing increasing by 233% and export increasing by 53% as they yield for several other global players as well. During the same period, the U.S. lost ground in export to Africa, 66%. So why can the African continent have favor for China over the United States? Or do you think we're going to be sleeping forever? No. Let's continue here. China influence go beyond trade relationship. It is also the top investor in infrastructure. America, you do not invest in Africa. You exploit African resources. European nations do not invest in Africa. They exploit African resources. They create proxy war. They kill African inventors. They kill African leaders. So why they do that? We're going to see it. China influence go beyond the trade relationship. It also help top investor and infrastructure. And now is the first destination of English-speaking African students, outperforming the US and UK. Now, why this is? So first of all, somebody may ask why this is. It's simple. It's simple. Now, the reason why there are more people going to China and learning technology, becoming engineer, right? Doctors, is because China is not afraid of losing her spot in Africa. China is not afraid of competition. But the United States is afraid of competition. The UK or European nations are afraid of competition. That is why they do not want for Africa to have more input or more knowledge in technology. Because if that happens, resources will not be coming to America or Europe. It will be right on the African continent where they will manufacture it and then make it into finished goods. Into finished goods before the United States can buy it. But America is cheap. They don't want to pay more money. Europe, they are cheap. They don't want to pay more money. They want to get it for little or nothing. And by they doing that, they have to exploit you. They have to put fear in you. They have to take down any leaders who have brilliant mindset for the African continent. That is what they are good at. But China is not afraid. China said, no, we will compete. That's what the war is for. In fact, in order to benefit from you, construction, all of those things, it's because of China in recent time. So there's other questions here, but I'm not going to. Let me see here. let me see the conclusion what this guy said, but it's long. I want to jump to something different so I can. Okay, so he said in conclusion, right? Let's look at the conclusion. So I want to get to the article that says the development of, how do you call it? The article that says foreign aid. I really want to get to that about foreign aid. So, but I just want to give this for people to understand why we don't trust America and how Western aid have affected Africa. We're going to get to that article, but I want you to see something here. Let me see here. So let's read the conclusion from this individual here. All right, let's read the conclusion here. So he said, in conclusion, it is time for U.S. to reverse. Now, reverse means what? To turn around from your old ways, from your sin. Oh yes, the U.S. has sinned on the African continent, and we're going to judge the U.S. Europe has sinned on the African continent, and we're going to judge Europe. Okay? So reverse means to turn around from your old ways, from your sin, from your lies. Okay? From previous behavior. All right? That's what reverse means in this context. Now, it is time for U.S. to reverse the trend in the ground lost in Africa, as many traditional and emerging global power are raising to capture Africa's tremendous economic potential. The U.S. has a sustained competitive advantage to partner with Africa. And now let me say this. This rhetoric here, this competitive advantage is the money, is the capital. There is nothing that the U.S. have over other people. The difference is just capital. But when it comes to technology, the U.S. does not have technology over China. The U.S. does not have technology over Russia. There are many, even over India. The U.S. does not have technology over India. And that is a fact. Most of the things in this country are from China or India or even from Russia and other nations around. So it's only the money, the capital. And the issue here is why the U.S. have that capital power. It's because of, again, exploitation of the same whole African continent, the same African people. That's why the United States have that edge over other nations. And second, the United States can print her own money. Other than that, the United States have no competitive advantage over any other nation. Let's continue here. So this rhetoric is coming from that perspective, but he did not put it here. But hey, we understand it's because of the capital. Let's continue here. The U.S. has sustained, and by the way, we revolutionary or we African, we don't care about that money, the capital. We care about the resources, because you cannot measure the value of resources that is to paper money. Paper money is nothing, but the resources is more value than paper. Let's continue here. The U.S. has a sustained competitive advantage to partner with Africa, advance U.S. trade and investment with the African continent. First of all, then why the U.S. did not do this long time? Let's forget about slavery. Let's forget about colonization. But when African nations gained independence, why did the U.S. they didn't do this? Why did Europe didn't do this? Because China was not in the making. Even Russia at that time, even though they helped African nations to gain independence, but it was not in the making. It was still weakening. How they call it continent, Europe and America, okay, or North America. These are the two continents that had the edge because they benefited from colonization and enslavement. So they had a capital at that time. Why didn't they take this advantage to invest on the African continent so that they can have more power to say, okay, let's forget about slavery, it happened. Let's forget about colonization, it happened, but let's pay back. But no, they didn't do that, but they went ahead to inflict more pain on African people. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. They say investment with the African continent. Why? While meeting the majority of African, it is up to the U.S. to ensure the recommendation above. So he made a lot of recommendation above. I didn't go through it because I don't even want to go through it because I don't have interest in those recommendations. I only have interest in the African continent and for African leaders to make the right decision. And that's my interest. Right decision that will affect the livelihood of the African people. That's my decision. That's my interest. Right decision that will put Africa the place it needs to be in the world. Africa is not competing with no one. Africa is not competing with the US. No one. Because as we speak, everybody wants to be African. Everybody wants to have a piece of Africa. How can we compete with people who want to have piece of us? It makes no sense. That's what we need to understand. We are not competing with US because US want to have piece of Africa. We are not competing with China because China want to have piece of Africa. We are not competing with Australia because Australia want to have piece of Africa. We are not competing with Europe because Europe want to have piece of Africa. We cannot compete with people who want to identify or to have piece of us. We cannot compete with people who need our attention. Let's continue. Let's continue here. It is up to the U.S. to pursue the recommendation above and seize this unique momentum to advance mutual U.S.-Africa trade and investment interests. Now, this momentum, and this is what the West are always good at doing. Okay? The stronger Africa, they come in when Africa is at a point of being stronger, in need. But our African leaders, please coordinate. One of the things that is making it difficult or hard for the African leader or for the African continent is because African leaders are not coordinating among themselves. They are not speaking to one another rightfully. They are not passing leadership, how they call it, or engagement between one another rightfully. When they go for the AU meeting, the so-called AU meeting, they do not discourse rightfully, meaningfully. They don't. Because if they were doing it, all right, I will stop there. Now everything can come out. Sometimes you leave it. Let's continue. By acting promptly and forging transformative partnership aligned with African values. First of all, this rhetoric, I can tell you did a great job by even saying this. America is not a nation to forge transformative partnership with country she see as nothing. That is a fact. So stop wasting your time. I know you wrote something good here, but let me make this clear to African leaders. America is not a continent. North America, okay, in totality. Or let's be specific. The United States is not a nation to forge transformative partnership. She have that always, that mindset of control, that mindset of conquer. They are they are imperialists. They are oppressor. They will never change. So they are not coming in for equality. The history of America, you should understand. Africa live here. When I say Africa, I mean the entire Africa. They live in America here. They are not off for transformative partnership or equality. They are not off for it. So African leaders should understand, even when they are coming, they are not coming with what they say. They are manipulative. They are coming with manipulative mindset. America is a nation full of conditioning your mind. They condition you. That is a fact. They know it. They themselves know it. They are not coming in for opportunity of to come and create transformative opportunity or partnership with who? Typical example. The so-called US-Africa Leadership Summit you had here. What did Tony Blinken say? What did he say? He said, America is the one creating the opportunity. America is the one creating the opportunity. America is the one bringing the resources. Did you see that? America is the one creating the opportunity. America is the one bringing the resources. Did you hear that? When the reality here is Africa is the one bringing the opportunity and Africa is the one bringing the resources. If not, America's economy is dead. That is what they fail to tell their people. And most people would think that, oh, raw material, or this country, they are developed country, what they do, they engage in recycling, they engage in this. You can't. You need a raw material to back off recycling process. You don't have the raw material. You cannot back up that recycling process. You're going to keep recycling until they finish. So Africa is the one bringing the opportunity and bringing the resources, bringing the material. Don't let them lie to you with words. Understand your worth and you will know who you are. Let's continue. The rhetoric continued. The rhetoric said the U.S. had the opportunity not only to advance its own interests and contribute to the transformation of a continent that will make up nearly 40% of the world population by 2100, but also the opportunity to lead the way in building a more prosperous, democratic, secure, and stable world. Again, I will say that for fact, promoting a democratic nation by promoting a secure and stable world or prosperous world. They will not function because they feel they will not compete. America is not a nation that can compete. All these colonial institutions or nations, they are not people that can compete. They can't. They have never compete. They are people who exploit, who take advantage of people. That's how they compete. That's how they grow their economy. That's how they grow their nation. They cannot compete. Because if it was by competition, when they went on the African continent, when Africa welcomed them and invited them to trade with them, they wouldn't have taken advantage of African people. If it were for competition, they was going to compete with African people equally, both home and abroad. They were going to share values, but they are not people that share values. It is a fact. They are not people that share value with one another, which is true. Let anybody prove me wrong again, I will tell you. When Africa was getting independent, what happened to the European nations that were in Africa? Everything they built, what happened? They'll burn it down. They burn it, they destroy them. So they don't share value. They don't. They don't share value. They don't share their technology. They bring out everything that they built. When Alexander the Great was leaving Ethiopia, what did he do? His library, he intentionally put fire on it and burned it because he did not want to leave it there for African to see it. That's in Egypt. He did not want to leave it there for African people to see it and to learn from it. They don't share knowledge. They don't do it. They destroy it. That is why when you understand these people, you can debate with them. You speak facts to them, they know it. That is why people who know they're killing, they don't come to you to make agreement with you or to make business partnership with you because they know they are coming for exploitation. They go to people who don't know about them. They don't come to people who know about them. That is why They'll always make sure and take down African leaders who know about them. That have been a systemic issue in Africa. African leaders who know about the West, their secret, their behavior, their attitude, they go and kill them directly or indirectly, take them there. Make their people to go against them, and their people go against their leaders. So let me take this out here. Let me take this out here. So now that we have seen it, right? Now, let's go to the 8th part. So before we go to the 8th part, let me answer a question here first. Tuesday said, at Frank, if these African leaders do not represent the will of the people, why don't the people remove them? Very great question. And some of these questions are going to be answered. Let me see if that's the next article. All right, that will be not the next article, but after this article will come and read, that will be the next article that will answer this question. But I will try to give you some answer to it. Now, if these African leaders do not represent the will of the people, why don't the people remove them? First of all, let me tell you this. That is why we keep saying here, right? America does not support true democracy in Africa. What do you see on the African continent? Democratic nation. People that believe in democracy, leaders that believe in democracy, they become threat to the U.S. And the U.S. what? Fire her and take them out. But now I know you may say the question is directed to the people, right? Now look at this. You see on the African continent, it is recently that African leaders are actually cooperating and working with the citizens they serve. But it has never been so in a very long time, because these leaders were being put in power by the same America and the West. Last week we read something about Congo, right? About Mobutu Sese Seko, right? What happened? What happened to him? And he was a puppet to the US. But when he realized that he was no longer going to be a puppet, he wanted to be a democratic, how they call it, government or leader. What happened? They went against him. When he realized that he wanted to develop Congo and for the Congolese to partake in their resources and to enjoy what belongs to them, what happened? The United States went against him, right? So it is recently that African leaders are coming to their senses and beginning to realize that, you know what? The only way I will survive, I have to be in line with my people. Because if you go in line with the U.S., tomorrow if the U.S. does not need you, either way, they're going to come after you and assassinate you and get you out. The only way you're going to be safe is to be with your people, dine with your people, live with your people, even if you don't have the resources that you need, but the little one that you have, work along with your people. And African leaders have come to realize it. Because if you don't do it, and you ally with America, and you do America serving a foreign policy interest, and tomorrow you begin to turn your back, what's going to happen? They see America use your people. So America will go in with their journalists, with their media, and say, you are a dictator. You ill-treat your people. They're not going to come and say, oh, you are protecting American interests. That's why you ill-treat your people. But they will come and say, you are a dictator. You ill-treat your people. You kill your people. You all kind of horrible things. And your people will believe it because they don't have information at their disposal to understand how America operates. And in turn, they will put your own people against you, and your own people may assassinate you. And then afterward, the media again will come and say, your own people kill you. You see it? And then what happened? They bring another leader and put that person in. Now your people, but America will handpick another leader and come and put them in. Had that solved the problem of the African people or your people? No. That's how America have contributed to the African continent in terms of development. So that have been one of the problems to African people. Okay? And now, because they are serving the will of and pleasure of America or the West, the people don't have power. The military there, if you try military come against you, and we have seen that several on the African continent. It is recently that the civilian and the military have worked together, but it have never been so. Because this military also, they feel that when they say they pledge to the country, that means they pledge to the president or they pledge to the leader of that country. And that have been the mindset. And that is why most African military, when they bring them to Europe or to America to learn or to train, that is what they tell them. You are serving to protect the president or the nation, or how they call it, the leader. So in their mind, what comes first is the leader. And that particular leader is serving the interest of Europe and America. So then what happened? If that leader is not serving the interest of the people, if the people want to rise up against that leader, what do you think is going to happen? Because those military have been trained by America and been, how they call it, indoctrinated in their mind. The only thing that they have to serve is the president. So they will not join the people. They will rather go against the people and kill their own people, shoot their own people. That's what's been happening on the African continent. But that dynamic is changing now. It's changing. You know why it's changing? Because of the same technology China have given to us. What we're doing here right now, even in Africa, it gave, how they call it, it gave African people on the African continent, right, the opportunity, okay, to have access to technology, to get even some of this information. But it was not there. The imperialists had information. The colonialists had information. They don't want you to know about them. They don't want you to know about them. But it is because of China, technology has improved on the African continent, that information are coming out. You tell it's by coincidence where the military and the citizen can work together to remove a seated president. You tell it's by coincidence. It's because of the same technology. It's because of through who? China. That the people are getting information. Even the army. They are becoming to learn. All these things are coming in place. It is because of who? The colonialists. These are some of the reasons. It's been difficult for citizens to rise up against their president. Even to go protest. It is something that has now been happening on the African continent. The army will come out to kill, or to shoot, or to stop them. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. Let's go to the next article. After this article, the next article will answer your question in depth. So let's go to the 8th part. Now we're getting to the 8th part. What we discuss here is just how they call it thesis, okay, thesis of what these people have done. Okay, and you're going to see some of them here. Okay, it's just the kind of development they have done on the African continent to get the distinction with China and US and Europe. Okay, and we're still going into it more. So follow me. Don't worry. This is WCC. Follow me. So let's look at the next one here. So let's see here. Okay. So let's look at the next one here. So now, it says, the title of this is from the Guardian, first of all. It says, the war is plundering Africa worth of billions of dollars a year, every year. Okay? The war. Who? This war is referring to who in the first place? It's referring to who? It's referring to the so-called America and the so-called Europe. Okay, that's the war right there. Now let's look right here. It says, let's go down to the article already. So it says more wealth leave Africa every year than enter it. Okay, more money leave Africa every year than the money entering Africa. All right, but what the war say? They tell us that more money go to Africa, okay, than what Africa bring in. But this article is telling us that no, that's not true. Okay, it's telling us that's not true. Let's go to Africa and more come from out of Africa. Let's see here. Now, more wealth leave Africa every year than enter it by more than 40 billion United States dollar, 31 billion Europe, according to research that challenges misleading perception of foreign aid. Misleading perception of foreign aid. So what this research is telling us that there are more aid coming from Africa and coming to Europe and coming to America than more aid coming from America going to Europe than more aid coming from Europe going to Africa. The research is telling us Africa gave more aid to Europe and America and to the rest of the world than Africa receiving it. Let's continue here. And which is true. But in order to make it not to understand, these people, they have very powerful media. They will come out and tell you Africa is poor, Africa is dying from starvation. Okay? And they will show, well, they will see people going on the African continent with aid, with this, with that. But they won't show what comes out of Africa. They only show what go in. Let's continue here. Analysts, by a correlation of UK and Africa Equality and Development Campaigner, including Global Justice Now, published on Wednesday, claim the rest of the world is profiting more than most African citizens from the continent wealth. Folks, let me make this clear. Money is nothing to the resources. Okay? This article is telling us that Africa gave more aid to Europe and America and to the rest of the world. Through what? Resources. Not money. Through resources. Let's continue here. It said African countries receive 162 billion in 2015. Okay? So in 2015, it is said that African countries in Africa received 162 billion in 2015. Okay, let's continue. Mainly in loan. So the 162 billion that Africa received in loan, right? Mainly in loan, command AID, aid assistance, right? And personal remittances. But in the same year, right? 2015, what it said Africa received $162 billion. In that same year, $203 billion was taken from the continent. Hello? In 2015, the so-called America and Europe said they gave $162 billion to Africa, right? In loan, aid, and how they call it, personal remittance, right? But in our same year, $203 billion was taken from the continent, either directly through multilateral partnership, profiting illegally, moving money into how they call it tax haven, or by costs imposed by the rest of the world through climate change, adoption, and mitigation. First of all, you see what it said here. Okay? You see what it said here. And you see again the language of the West. Okay? Now, let's go in, right, by settling Africa problem. Oh, climate change, we want to do this. And that's a recent hottest topic, right? Climate change. But do you really believe that these so-called world leaders coming to do climate change in Africa for African people? For what? For what reason? In fact, we gave report before, and in our report, in the bottom part of the report, after they said what they wanted to say, the bottom part, what they hear the information, they say Europe and America or the West will not be in any position to provide solution, for the African continent in terms of climate change. They said the African people, African leaders have to find solution for climate change for themselves. But these are the same people that will call you so-called African leader to come and have meeting for climate change. You know what they do? They get your idea and go build on it. That's all. So in 2015, they said they gave Africa 162 billion. But in our same 2015, they took 203 billion. So who is giving aid to who and who is giving loan to who? Let's continue here. We'll see that. Let's continue here. This led to an annual financial deficit. You see, so now you see why the African continent is underdeveloped and is poor, suffering from starvation and all kind of a deficit, right? This led to an annual financial deficit of what? 41.3 billion from the 47 African countries where many people remain trapped in poverty, according to the report Honest Account 2017. The campaigner said illicit financial flow, defined as the illegal movement of cash between countries, account for 68 billion. So again, you see here, who is giving aid? This is leaving. It's just like France talking about it giving aid to the so-called 14 African Francophone nation, right? But every year, France is the one taking $500 billion from those countries. And then France come, after France take $500 billion from those countries, and then France take maybe 1 million, and 1 million each country. France takes 500 billion, and then take 1 million, 1 million, 1 million, 1 million, and give it to those 14 African nations and say, we're giving you aid. So you see the explanation here. You see the equilibrium. Or you see that the parallel line going, right? You see it there. Okay? You take $500 billion from people, and then come by and say, then out of that $500 billion, you take 1 million, 1 million, 1 million each from there, and then say, we're giving it to you back for aid. This is what happening on the African continent. Okay? This is what happening on the African continent. The campaigner said illicit financial flow, defined as the illegal movement of cash between countries, account for 68 billion a year, 3 times as much as 19 billion African receive in aid. African receive 19 billion in aid, but 3 of that, right, 68 billion, go back to the same people that say they come and get Africa aid. Is this not a myth that Africa is the one receiving aid? But rather, Europe, America, or the so-called developed or Western world are the one receiving aid from Africa? Do you see how Africa has been the center to the world growth and development? Why she forget about herself? Why she forget about her citizens? Why she forget about her own people? But put her focus on other nations. So do you now see why the war? Do you now see why all of them are running to Africa? Because Africans are waking up. Africans are becoming to realize that, hold a minute, who is feeding who? Who is getting aid from who? Who is giving aid to who? Are you seeing it? So that is why Africa, we are not competing with nobody. You cannot compete with people who want to identify with you. You cannot compete with people who are fighting to just touch you, to become, you cannot compete with people who want to be African. You can't. You cannot compete with people who have nothing, but rather who want what you have. How are you going to compete with people who want what you have? Oh, that is why Africans are waking up now. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. Let's see here. Now, Tim Jones, an economist from the Jubilee Debt Campaign, said the key message we want to get across is that more money flow out of Africa than goes in. More money flow out of Africa than go in. The myth of Western aid to Africa. The myth of Western loan to Africa. The myth. Let's continue here. The key message we want to get across is that more money flow out of Africa than goes in. And if we are to address poverty and income inequality, we have to help to get it back. The key contributor to this inequality include unjust debt payment and multinational companies hiding proceeds through tax avoidance and corruption. Oh no, they say, you see, let me say this. This is again African leaders. You guys will sit on the African continent and allow these people come in. They corrupt you, but when they succeed, and then they write book, go on their media, and then say African leaders are corrupt. But they are the most corrupt elements in the world. It is because of corruption in the first place we have racism. It is because of corruption in the first place we have inequality in society. And who brought about these things? These same colonizer and enslaver, these same Westerners. It is because of corruption we have discriminations. Who brought about discrimination? The same people. Understand that. That is a fact. Let's continue here. So you African leaders sit down there. They are coming. How they call it? The so-called Janet or Yellen, the secretary for the so-called U.S. Treasury. She's coming. She's on her way today to Africa, to Zambia, South Africa, and Senegal. They're coming there. Okay? They will condition you, and then tomorrow they come out to rap, but they say you corrupt. So sit down there. Don't understand these people. So when we bring out these things, just put it there and say, oh, this is just another boy talking another trash. But you guess what? The more you say, this is just another boy talking another trash, it just means you are putting the next generation into trash. Let's continue. African government, again, now, I'm glad they mentioned African government here. African government received 32 billion in loan in 2015, but pay more than half of that, 18 billion in debt interest. Now, they say African governments. First, let me make this disclaimer. Let me make it clear here. African government with S. Now, we don't know how many countries in Africa received this 32 billion, right? But let's just say 32 countries For instance, okay? For instance, that rationalize it. For instance, let's just say 32 African nations received 32 billion. Okay? Now, out of this 32, 2 African nations, okay, pay. Now, let's say out of this 32 billion, right? Each of these African nations pay 18 billion in debt. Okay? Pay 18 billion as interest. As interest. Okay? As interest. So now, they gave it 32 billion. Okay? Then each nation or leader end up paying 18 billion in interest. Now, if 2 nations pay 18 billion, that's how much? 36 billion. So out of the 32 nations that receive the 32 billion, just 2 nations pay 36 billion, 18 billion, 18 billion each, and they pay 36 billion. They already got their money. So who is exploiting their friend? Who is giving aid? Who is helping their friend? Are they helping the African nation? Are they helping the African continent? Are they helping African leaders? Are they actually giving loan or aid to African leaders or to African nations? You see here, African government received 32 billion in loan in 2015, but pay more than half of that 18 billion in debt interest, with the level of debt rising rapidly. All right, let's continue here. Now, the report point out that Africa has considerable riches. Considerable riches. South Africa potential mineral wealth is estimated to be around 2.5 trillion, while the mineral resource, the mineral reserve of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I thought to be worth $24 trillion. So while they're measuring the resources, how they call it, they're trying to tell you, right? The resources are more valuable than that money. These people are exploiting Africa. So it is a myth when people tell you Africa is a suffering continent, African nations are suffering, they are terror, they are poor. All right? We understand the livelihood, okay, are not conducive due to lack of leadership. Again, we go to lack of leadership. Now, 1, and 2, ignorant to these things. Ignorant to the motive of the West. Let's continue here. So let's take this out. I posted this link. So let's take this out. Okay, we're running out of time. Let me go to the next link. Let's take this out. So you see what is happening on the African continent. So who is giving aid to who, right? Now, how did this all start? This whole aid, loan, everything, how did it start? Because when we were getting independent in the 60s, we never had aid problem. We never had loan problem, right? But how did it start? Where did it come from? The same aid thing was used again by the same colonizer to get African people. Follow me. Let's see this here. So we're going to answer TZ question from this article that I'm about to post up. Let's see here. So let's see here, right? That will be the last article, and then we will watch a movie to glench together, and then that will be it. So let's see here. All right. Western aid myth. So let's see. So now the source for this, it says countercurrent. Countercurrent.org. All right. So this article was published February 13, 2021. So countercurrent.org. So it said Western aid, myth and reality. Western aid, myth and reality. Now, let's go here. So it's a little bit long. I'm going to like read, and then where I need to explain, I will explain. But most I'm just going to read because we're running out of time. I'm just going to read, all right? So that you can see. Now, the word seek to pressure. Now, so when African nations were getting independent in the 60s, so this is where this whole issue of loan, aid, Africa old, this is where it started. So it was another mean that was used that, okay, since these nations are getting independent, okay, America, Europe, okay, they said since these nations are getting independent and we still need our resources, we have to find a way to strangle them. We have to find a way to get them back into our pocket, to make them look independent, but economically, they are still colonized. Let's continue here. So that is why we cannot trust these people. That is why we cannot trust America. Let America go through what she's supposed to go through. Then when we come to help, they will understand. If we don't do that, we allow these people in, it's a doom for us. Sorry to say it. It's the fact I'm saying here. It's a doom. Let's continue here. The word seek to preserve, the word seek to preserve present relation, which enable it to make immense profit by exploiting natural resources and manpower resources of the whole world. It also models socio-economic development of neo-colonial status. Now, this is current. What they are saying here is America or Europe, the model they are coming with, it is the same model of the one neo-colonial states or status. There is nothing they are coming with equality. They are not coming. What they are coming with is the model of a neo-colonial status. Remember, Nkrumah told us neo-colonialism is the last stage. And when you really see it, this is the last stage of the neo-colonialism Nkrumah was talking about. You are seeing how these people are fighting. You are seeing how these people are actually saying Africa is the last hope. You are seeing how these people are telling us if anybody, even if America is to survive, it has to be Africa. If not Africa, America will not survive. If not Africa, Europe will not survive. They are saying it clear. Neo-colonialism. And why that is happening? It's happening because African people are waking up. It's happening because African people have realized that America have never been there for them and America have never helped them. They have realized that their problem are caused by America, even in this current situation. And they are turning their back. They have realized it. So if they are coming back, they are coming back with the same neo-colonial status. Let's continue. A hint to a wise is quite sufficient. Those who have ear, let them hear, and let them listen, and let them take. This is for the African leaders. Let's continue here. There is good reason behind the billion of easy credit. There is good reason, but let's read this first. They are coming with neo-colonial status to the purpose by adopting development model, which will be based on foreign capital for finance, technology, know-how. There is a good reason behind this billion of easy credit. Now, again, we have said this on this channel time with our numbers. If we are not careful, just how we made mistake on the African independence and gave our nation's economy to the West, okay? Well, when they kill our leaders, if we are not being careful, this time around again, the colonizer, the imperialist, the oppressor, they are coming as investors. They are coming as investors. Let's continue. When colonized states want independence, again, African leaders, this is for you. This whole reading is for you. When colonized states want independence, capitalism lost some sphere of influence, commodity market, and source of raw material. Independent states started taking a stand in economic spheres. That means African nations, right? Independent state, African nations, right? Now, they try to curb foreign capital. They try to stop it in circulation and in production, sphere, and naturalized property. What they did here, African nation, when they get independent, what did they try to do? They try to cut off colonial nation that colonized them, right? They try to what? Take colonial institution from African nations, right? Now, they try to do away with what? Colonial influence like capital. They try to do away with it. In this current time, did we not see Burkina Faso? When Burkina Faso took a mine from foreigners and said we're going to nationalize it, what happened? America said they cut tie with Burkina Faso. What happened in Sierra Leone? When Sierra Leone passed in legislation, they passed on rights of natural resources to the citizen, and they said if foreign corporation come into Sierra Leone to make an deal, it will not just stop in the house by leaders. They also have to go down to the layman, to the town, to the chief, to the kings, to the clergy, to the leadership of that village, of the city, to the people. If the people say no, and even if it has been agreed upon in parliament or in the house, that deal will not go through. What happened? In that same week, when the Sierra Leonean president traveled, he left the country. They went behind him to destabilize it. It was coup d'etat. As he described it, the president described it was a coup d'etat. Because of that deal, what happened? People went in, they incite violence into the people because of their ignorance. Pay attention. That's the same thing that happened here during independence when African nations started getting independent. United States or the UK, we don't want you. We don't need your influence. Leave. What happened? Let's continue here. But even after independence, they remain dependent upon capitalist economy and foreign monopoly capital, leading to neo-colonialists. So, when we get independent during that time period, some African leaders were making moves, but it still failed. And when you also look at the AU, when you look at the Casablanca and the Morovia group, everything how they wanted to unite the African continent, right? All relate in here. Where the Morovia group were still depending on their colonialists for capital, for money, that again going here. The colonialists were still depending on, that's it, the Morovia group were still depending on the capitalists. And the Morovia group included, that time, President Totmans was the president in Liberia. Okay? Now, included so many nations. They still depend on their colonialists. No, we need money. We just came from independence. We need money to build our country. We need money to build our infrastructure. We need money to do this, to do this, to do that, to do this. This is where this is coming from. Okay? This is where this is coming from. And they went against the Casablanca group, solely focused on Nkrumah. Okay? They went against these groups and wanted to be still horse negro or puppet because they wanted assistance from their, how they call it, neo-colonialists or from their colonial master. They wanted their colonial master to build their army. Okay? How the colonial master will build your army and he know or she know if she build you up, you're going to go against him. Nkrumah said, no, let us depart from these people. Nkrumah went with Marco Garvey ideology. We cannot integrate Africa by allying ourselves with these people. We cannot integrate Africa by having a strong military and sending our military to these people overseas to go train them. How your enemy going to train you to go overthrow him? How your enemy going to train you to go in battle with him? You think you're going to win? No, Nkrumah said, no, we cannot do these things. But they listened to him not. Let's continue here. They said, we want money, we want this, we need their assistance. They went, they split, and that did not work. They went, right? And that today led still to the exploitation of the African continent. Let's continue here. So this is where that whole financial loan aid all started from. Let's continue here. The idea of internal communication of resources and development of state sector initially gained favor in less developed countries. But due to lack of development, again, you see it, due to lack of development, they needed external resources for modern industrial technology and raising the level of consumption. Now, this question goes to President Barack Obama again and the United States. During this time, we get independent. We say, okay, y'all come. We still invite you people. We still look at you people as human beings. You know, or even though what you did to us, we call you, they call you, y'all went in. Y'all did not invest in technology. So how it is today, Obama is talking about, 90% of the African youth, this is how they do it, to play on our emotions. These people know how to play on our emotions. But when we needed the technology, you brought in nuts. When we needed the development, you brought it nuts. When we needed a partnership, you brought it not. But you killed this leader that had this brilliant idea. But when China came in, that's the time you realize that 90% of African youth, they in favor of technology. Nonsense. Let's continue here. Over accumulation of capital in capitalist countries require international lending. Debt grow exponentially and is an effective instrument of control. Leading agency sold the unpaid loan which they has given. This is where all these things started from. The unpaid loan which they has given to African countries to predator who strong arm the countries to hand over natural resources at the rate of pennies to $1. This is where all these started from again. So you see how these people have worked with the African nations since independence. They were on the African continent. They had the opportunity because they were doing what China is doing. In fact, China was never going to stand change or to have the change because, first of all, nobody was going to invite China. But the reason why China went in is because nobody was doing it, and it took China. And in fact, the reason why they took China is because when they look at China policy and China interests, and when they look at the agreement between China and the African nation, and the agreement between the African nation and America and Europe, America deals, and that of Europe as well. Destruction, death, control, oppressive. So they went with China. So America, your sin in Africa will catch up to you. Europe, your sin in Africa will catch up to you. There's nothing you do under the sun. You will not pay the price. You have to pay the price. It is the facts. You're going to pay the price for what you did. You will pay the price. Y'all will pay the price. Let's continue. Term of loan and its use should be in line with the country development strategy and not for unsustainable projects trust upon weak, stupid, and corrupt ruler. But this is how America have invested in Africa. This is how Europe have invested in Africa. Through stupid leader, through corrupt leader, through weak leader. If a leader come into power that is now weak, America ain't want you. They try to get you out. If a leader come into power that is now weak, that is not corrupt, America ain't want you. Europe ain't want you. They try to get you out. They say your time is over. You should leave. They put people against you. They coup d'etat. They kill you. They say your time is over. That's the kind of development America have done. And that is a fact. They know it. You have never worked with leaders who have the intention, great intention, potential of developing Africa. That's the kind of development you have done on the African continent. Let's continue. So you see, these things did not start today. So America, we just reminding you, these are the reasons why we choose China over you. And we will choose China over you even today, tomorrow, and after tomorrow. We will choose China over you because you are yet to pay for your sin. You are yet to recognize your sin. You are yet to live up to your sin. Let's continue. From the capitalist point of view, aid is an instrument of expansion of political economic goal to help their monopoly to penetrate less developed countries. Now, you understand here, that is their view. Their view is not come in to give you aid for development, to give you aid to improve your life. It is a myth. If public policy could be prosecuted for misleading advertising, the label foreign aid will be an obvious case. You listen to that. Let me read it again. If public policy, if American foreign policy, if American foreign interest policy could be prosecuted for misleading nations, for misleading African people, the label foreign aid, the label foreign aid will be obvious case for the court to prosecute the myth of foreign aid on the African continent to African nation. It is a myth. Let's continue. Aid used properly could increase access, consumer goods, science, and technology. But it have never been used properly on the African continent. Because why? Aid that they gave to the African leader or to the African continent. In fact, I don't want to go. They explain it. It will go here because the more I explain, we're going to take long time and we will not get to where we want to get. All right? But this article is so. Let's continue. I posted it. If even we don't reach the end or the conclusion, I posted this link. You have the time. You can read it. Okay? Let's continue. They are saying if aid could be used properly, right? It could increase access, consumer goods, science, and technology. But look at the African continent. Since the 60s, independent Africa, right? The so-called Western aid or European aid or American aid or loan have been going on the African continent. Let's just take it for that. But if it was for good purpose, if it was for good faith, technology could have been increased on the African continent. Consumer goods could have been increased on the African continent. Science could have been increased on the African continent. The African continent could have been built in all level of manners. But no, look at the African continent since the 60s. Let's continue here. In fact, could be compensated for the damage inflicted by colonization. But no, they don't do it. Same colonization, they don't do it. They still inflict more damages on the African continent. That's the kind of development Europe and America has done on the African continent. Oh yeah, we will name that development. We will name the kind of development they have done on the African continent. That's the kind of development they have done on the African continent by creating more inflation, by creating more inflicted wound on the African people. And then they come out and say, we have to work in partnership, collaboration, this, that. The reality here is America and Africa have never had a good relationship. They have never had that diplomatic relationship. They have never had that partner, like equal opportunity or whatsoever, equality. They have never. They have been oppressive. They have been just obedient, just one-sided. They have been destructive. They have now been mutual. They have been always dictating to them and supporting dictators on the African continent. That is a fact. Western agencies claim that less developed country can solve their social problem with aid without any progressive transformation, reconstruction of aid system. That is obviously not correct. That is obviously not true. Let's continue, okay? Because you bring your aid and you have all kind of strings attached to it. Let's continue here. Let's continue. Analysis of the instrument of aid and its orientation. Analysis of the instrument of aid and its orientation and influence on economic of the recipient. So let's see this now. So these are the things they, how they call it? What is the word I want to use? Constrain or restrain they put on aid. Okay, so these are the things now. Aid as capital export. 1. State and state guaranteed private capital, potential lesson of know-how, brain drain, migration of labor, struggled among capitalist countries and group of countries, constitute new international social economic relation. Now, let's see here. From 1950, all least developed country. Now, first of all, in the 50s, right, or the 60s, we're getting independent. How will you even call Africa least developed? Okay? We were not least developed. You just destroy us. You just honor developer. We were not least developed. We were developed, but Europe came in, America came in, and they destroy Africa. They honor develop Africa. So that is why Walter Rooney, when he's really developed, he did not say how Europe came and met the least developed African nation or the African continent. He did not say how European came and met Africa undeveloped. He said how Europe undeveloped. That means we were developed. Let's continue on this. From 1950, all least developed countries joined the rank of creditor. Now you see when we were getting independent. Okay? African leaders said, those are the they agree with the Casablanca group, whoever, and that is what exactly still happening. African people think that if they don't leave America, they will not develop. They will not develop in technology or engineer, doctors, lawyer, whatsoever. They will not. That's the mentality. That's the mindset. We will not develop. And that's the kind of mindset back then as well. Okay? That's the kind of mindset back then as well. From 1950, all these developed countries joined the rank of creditor countries. Export of capital is one of the most essential features of capitalism. Though its mechanism have changed with time, material condition of reproduction are consumed by help from monopolies to market their products and obtain raw material. Outsourcing gave additional advantage of cheap labor for ruling class and increased profit. So you see here, in this current time, as we've been discussing this with IMF, right? IMF. In this current time, we also been discussing this with what? What is this meaning? Economic hitmen. Okay? So all these things started from back then. So it just been changing. Like it says here, even though it have changed. So even though it changed, but the behavior, the attitude is still the same. Let's continue here. Most aid is low interest or increased fees, but it serves as infrastructure and is necessary for purchase of the means of production and labor power. And that is what's happening, right? Profit is obtained by multinational corporation. Profit is not obtained. So these people, they are making business out of African people. Who giving aid to who? Who helping who? Who is poor? Who is the terror country now? And conditions are created for the expansion and lead to suppression of development of industrial base in the recipient country in order to curb competition. Now, maybe you did not understand it. Let me explain this again. Now, those nations, America, the United States, or IMF that get loan, they come with strings attached. They come with restraint. And the reason why they do this, they don't want the country to which they are giving money to or lending money to, that country to develop. So they tell you the money will give you where to use it, because they know if you use that money to where they want you to use it, it will never have impact on your economy, on the livelihood of your people, on your development. It will never have impact. So they tell you where to use it. And the reason why they tell you where to use it is because they do not want you to use it to places that will improve your economy or the human capacity of their citizens. If that happens, they will no longer have the opportunity or the capability to exploit your nation, or even that to compete with you. Capitalists, America is not a nation that can compete. We saw it in the other article, and we've seen it here again. These nations that oppress, that suppress, that colonize, in fact, these nations that build their economy on the suffering and demise of African people through colonization and enslavement, they are not nations to compete. They were never built to compete. They were built to exploit people. But they may come to you and say, oh, capitalism is a form where everybody compete. They can't compete. That is why they kill African leaders who want to bring out system to empower African people so that Africa can be on top of the world, so that Africa too can have a place and to compete with the rest of the world. They don't want it. They go and kill you and say, we don't compete. America don't compete. Europe, they don't compete. It's not in their DNA to compete. Let's continue here. Now, they come to food. Food subsidize, help export of agriculture businesses or technical assistance, favor further export, increases labor productivity, and indirectly suppresses the working class movement in both countries. They get access to unorganized labor, which is cheaper and easier to control. Isn't it? Isn't it? Why do you see most American companies? Most American companies, they carry a company out of America because they get cheap labor there, because they pay people cheap, Okay? And then they bring it by America, or they carry around a war and sell it and make more profit. That is what it's saying here. All right, but let's go follow down because we're actually running out of time. So, okay, let's see another thing here. Aid is tied to buy goods or services from developed country. Aid is tied to buy goods or services from developed country. That is what aid is for. And or use it for specific purpose. As we saw it from previous articles and even the beginning of this article, that is what aid is for. Aid is not there they are giving the money to. It's there to exploit that country. It is a tactics given by these colonial institutions or nation doing independent in order to still have control or mind of Africans to control their resources. Now, tying aid is to channel on export. Now, 1 million in aid create 760,000 worth of goods besides salary or consulting and technical input. Now, let's explain this for when it said tied aid is to channel on export, right? Now, TYING, it just means, right? The country to whom the aid is being given to, right? That country have to go to the country that is giving the aid. Okay? If you want to do any development in your country, you have to go back to that country that gave you the aid to buy any equipment or resources. But you cannot go to other country. Okay? So part of the agreement of the person that gave you the aid is telling you, you have to come to my country if you need expert. You can't go to other people to go get expert. You can't go to China. You can't go to Russia. You have to come to me. Okay? So those are the constraints put on the aid. Now, if these people come in, you have to come to these people, right? Because then, if you come to them, they are expert. They're going to charge you again. So is that aid? And when they come, it's a system that is already put in place. They are not coming to give you any concrete or solid development to compete with them. So, for example, they gave you aid to come and train your military. So they are telling you, you are not going to China for Chinese to train your military, or to Russia for Russia to train your military. You have to come to the United States for the United States to come and train your military. So part of that money coming right back to the United States. Okay? And your military being trained by America, they're not going to train you to make it sophisticated to come and fight them, to defeat them. I'm not going to make you, am I going to train you to put you in a ring with me to come and fight me and beat me? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give you all my secret. I might train you, and, to battle me a little bit, but under no circumstances you win me. You will never win me. That is why I'm saying tying, Tying, tying aid is to China on export. You see it? Now, let's continue that. I'm not going to read that, but I explained that you have seen it, right? So, so you got it. I mean, we're running out of time, but you have gotten how they call it aid, started in Africa and where it is today. And you have also getting why America is struggling, or Europe is struggling today, running behind China, when China lately just went on the African continent. When America and Europe, they are the one that had the opportunity, right? Or the whole time in the world to change around after they enslaved African people, right? They demonized the church, all right? We still look at it. Then when they colonized the entire African continent, demonized or church or exploit or steal our resources, we said, okay, no problem. We fought, we got independent. We said, okay, we can't leave our colonial master. We still need them around. Hypothetically, right? Frankly speaking, let's just put it that way. We can't leave them. We still need them because they exploit it all. They have our money. They have the resources. We still need them to bear ourselves. That's the delusional mindset we have, right? Okay, fine. We say, okay, y'all still come. We will still work with you. With everything you guys have done to us, we still welcome you people. We still see you as part of the human race. Come. We call them. Stay. They didn't see us as people to make business with. It is today that they want to see African people to make business with. Look, let us start joking and playing fun here. These people, they are not coming to make business with African people. It is a fact. They are not coming to make business with African people. They are not coming to be equal partner with you. They are not. It is not in their DNA to be equal partner with you. You think they're coming to listen to you dictate to them or to tell them how to run the war? They are not. They are not. Okay? So the article is that I posted it, but because we run out of time and I got one more video to show, so I have to take it out. But you have seen it, and what AIDS have done to the African continent. All right? Since independent time, they've been giving aid to Africa. What have it done? What have aid done to increase or to improve the human capacity of the African youth, of the African continent? What have America done to improve livelihood on the African continent? If not chaos, if not war, if not proxy, if not supporting war, if not supporting rebels in DRC, in Ethiopia, if not supporting rebels in other nations there like Liberia, if not supporting dictator, what have they done? The seed that you sow, you will reap it. We have no regret turning our back because we have all right to turn our back and to invite anybody on the African continent. Just because you think we're hearing that, America coming with investment, America coming with sustainable development, America coming with tech, you can keep your technology. You've been keeping it. Or because you're seeing China investment on the African continent, then you want to come with technology. In fact, you don't have technology more than China because most of your products are being manufactured in China. You don't have technology more than India. Most of your products are being manufactured in India and other places. This is not hate, but it is the truth. We're just trying to make America to understand your language and your attitude and your behavior and your words. You are a nation that never lived to your words. African people live to their word when it comes to you having business with them, but you never live to your word. You stab up in our back. Each time we come with agreement, we accept you, you stab up in our back. You call our names. So we just reminding you. We just reminding you, we don't hate you. We just reminding you of your behavior. And that is also to say, we turn our back. That is to say, we have the right to make partnership with anybody in the world. We have the right to say we choose China over you. Because we are saying, we're not saying everything is perfect with Africa and China relationship, but comparing both of them, you and the so-called Europe, comparing it, and see how far we have come, or the African continent have come, or the improvement of African youth, of life, in what they have done. We take China over you. If America come and say by 2030, half of African population will be middle class or income, it was not because of the effort of America. That is a fact. It is because of the effort of African people to realize who you are, and to realize who Europe is, and to realize who they need to work with. It is because of the effort to recognize or to realize who their enemies are, and who they need to turn to for help. And they daily, since the 2000s. And that is why you see improvement on the African continent. It is not by Europe or America. You honor develop us. You create chaos. The situation we are facing currently, even if we don't want to go to the past, but the current situation, you created it. Who created a problem in Rwanda? The genocide. Who created a problem in DRC Congo? Who created a problem today as we speak in Libya? Who created a problem in Sudan? Who created a problem in Mali? Who created a problem in Niger? Chad? Somalia? Who created the problem? It's not China. It's not Russia. That's the reason why we are turning our back from you, America. Let's look at the last video, and then we'll call it for a day. Now, this last video, it just also explained how the war sort of depend on Africa and how the war have exploited Africa, how Africa have gave aid to the war, how Africa have feed the war, and the war we're talking about the United States, North America, Canada, and so forth, and Europe, okay? How Africa build an economy and how they destroy Africa. And it's also reminding we African leaders or you African leaders to wake up. It's reminding you that nobody will build Africa. It's reminding you that by coming in America, having meetings, going to Europe, having meetings, it will not build Africa. It will not change Africa. It will not change the mindset of these people. All right? So let's watch it.
Insignificant Africa. Small, intellectually, politically, and economically insignificant Africa. But is that really true? Now, here are the facts. Africa has a total area space larger than all of Europe, China, and the United States of America combined. Yes, it is 3 times the area of China, 3 times the area of Europe, 3 times the area of United States of America, meaning you can transplant China, Europe, and United States, and several other countries on the Africa continent, and they will fit neatly. Africa is 30.5 million square kilometers and a youthful population of 1.3 billion inhabitants. China is 9.6 million square kilometers and 1.4 billion inhabitants. India has a total space of 3.3 million square kilometers and 1.4 billion inhabitants. Now, yet, Africa is projected as overpopulated, and pressure mounts on Africans and their leaders to depopulate. Why? Why? Now, please note, Africa is home to 60% of the world's arable land, 90% of raw material reserve, 40% of gold reserve, 33% of diamond reserve, 95% of platinum reserve, and holds the largest bauxite reserves in the world. Of course, in addition to manganese, woods, uranium, crude oil, and others. Yet, the continent is touted as the poverty capital of the world and ripe for depopulation. The question is, why? Well, President Jacques Chirac of France provides an illuminating insight. He said, "We bled Africa for 4.5 centuries. We looted their raw materials. Then we told lies that the Africans are good for nothing. In the name of religion, we destroyed their culture. And after being made rich at their expense, we now steal their brains through miseducation and propaganda to prevent them from enacting black retribution against us," unquote. Well, put simply, for over 4 centuries, Africa is not in control of it. Look, a 2016 study of Africa by the NGO called War on Want reveals that 101 companies, mostly British, control $305 billion worth of platinum, $276 billion worth of oil, and $216 billion worth of coal at 2016 market prices. Yes, they own mines or mineral licenses in 37 African countries and control vast swath of Africa's land, 4 times the size of the United Kingdom. Now look, Africa subsidizes the rest of the world by $32 billion annually. A 2017 report by Global Justice Now and other groups estimates that $161.6 billion enter into Africa, while $202.9 billion leave Africa.
So again, as you listen to the video, so you see who is getting aid and who is helping who, and who is poor and who is rich. Who is the shithole country, or who are the insignificant people like George Bush called Africa, or Donald Trump called African nation shithole. So as you see here, right, who are the shithole and who are the insignificant?
Almost every year. For example, 2017 report by Global Justice Now and other groups estimates that $161.6 billion enter into Africa, while $202.9 billion leave Africa almost every year. For example, in 2017, Africa received a total of $19.7 billion in aid. They paid back $18 billion in debt repayments. Debt burden is killing Africa. African governments have $18.7 billion in aid. They paid back $18 billion in debt repayments. Debt little or nothing to show for it. Africans in the diasporas remit not less than $32 billion annually, but multinational companies siphon $32.4 billion in profits and illicit financial outflows. Look, an estimated $29 billion are stolen via illegal logging, fishing, and poaching annually. How can any continent, country, or people accumulate and sustain wealth, growth, and prosperity with such statistics? That's a great question. Well, look, hopefully, now you know your Africa better. Edmund Mbiaka once wrote, "Peace of mind always comes with knowing who you truly are, where you currently stand, where you positively need to be, and strongly believing in its possibility." Africa needs to control its resources, no doubt. For productive, patriotic, and effective leadership, we need our best and ablest citizens with fortified character in local, state, and federal governments. This must be given utmost consideration in upcoming elections across Africa. Let me say it once more. Our problem is not the age of our leaders, but unfortified character. It is your responsibility to protect and defend your Africa. The starting point is to educate and transform the mindset of our leaders and peoples, ensuring that this message reaches every African. Slavery destroyed us. Religion divided us. Ignorance controls us. Progressive forces. Africa will remain a dark continent. We must renew our minds. Please share this video in support of my efforts at reconstructing Africa through mindset transformation. You see, together, we will reconstruct Africa and take charge of our destiny. For who controls Africa controls the world. I thank you.
All right, so the last statement, I'm going to start with the last statement. So we heard that who control Africa, okay, control the world. Now the question then becomes is, African people, do we want to control the world? Because America know it, Joe Biden know it, that in this current time, if we Africans have not yet seen it, if African leaders have not yet seen it, they better wake up to see it. Joe Biden know that, or the Prime Minister of England, or even Germany, they already know. This current time, anyone that control Africa, control the world. So the question then becomes is, African leaders, don't you want to control the world? African people, don't you want to control the world? Don't you want to control the world? Do you want for America to come and to control the world? And if you want for America to come to control the world, then give them Africa. If you want for Europe to come and control the world, then give them Africa. Like how some of you so-called African leaders have done it. Like the Zambia president already, he have done it. The Congolese president already, he has done it. Many of them have done it. But just like some of them, their name have not yet come out. But those that their name are out, they're the one we call it. They have done it. Senegal president have done it. Macky Sall, he have Janet Yellen, the so-called Secretary of the United States Treasury, the so-called her is on her way today to Africa to meet those African nations. Ramaphosa, we know South Africa, she's not a free nation for African people. They are still. So you see, so you African leaders, do you want to control the world? If you don't want to, then fine. Then give them Africa. Because these people have control the world through Africa. It is because of Africa the United States is a superpower. It is because of Africa you are how they call it, Europe or UK or Germany, they are among the superpower. Or Germany was among, I don't know if she stayed there, but it is because of Africa. The resources, the manpower, the advantage they took of us. UK was nowhere, Germany was nowhere, United States was nowhere. It is because of us. Even as we speak, well, India, little India is among the world ranking power right now. It's because of Africa. Oh my God. Why can African leaders notice that we are a continent? We are not individual nation. Why can't they notice that? As long as we remain individual nation, we are still a colony. As long as we remain individual nation, we are still conquer. Why can't they understand, if you want to rule the world, you have to control Africa. Anybody that control Africa rule the world. So if we African people, we already have Africa, we already own the continent, why should we allow anybody to come and rule or to come and control us? And then that person become the ruler or the controller of the world. We don't have to fight. That's the thing about it. Africa don't have to fight again. We don't have to struggle. We already have the continent. America can struggle to own it, which of course she's doing right now. China can struggle to own it, which of course she's doing right now. Great Britain or Europe, but we Africans are not struggling. We already have it. What are we doing? We rule the world. All we have to do is say no to America. Say no to Europe. Say no to these people. We built America when we were not tech pay. We built America when it was not through fund alone. It was not through money. We built America when America sent out to school. So why should we have the mindset that you have to go to school before you build, before you this? We built Europe when we did not go to school. Who told you that before Africa built or developed, we have to go to European school or go? We did not go to school, but we invented light bulb that's Edison told, or the so-called Edison told came and took it. And you know, as a slave, you invent anything, the slave master took it because you were a property to that slave master. You carry the name, the last name of the slave master, so you were property. We built cars. We never went to school. Even up to now in Africa today is happening. There are again a 19 years old boy I saw. He built a Mercedes Benz. He had never gone to school to learn trade. Or he had mans. He built it from scratch to end with his hand and a move. What am I saying here, Africans? We don't need aid. We don't need European money. We don't need American money. Stop it. We don't need it to build. All you need is have trust in your people. Work with your people. The little resources we have. Who told you people will not come? We have the resources. No matter what you do, they will run to us. But do not allow them take our resources and give us nothing. Do not allow them take power over us. The little resources or money we have, invest it into your people. We don't need their money because the money they're giving after us is our own money. It's our labor. It's our resources they are stolen from us. It's even African money. African leaders who are so corrupt bank their money in European bank, and after they say no to America and Europe, and then when they assassinated the kid, they take that same money and then they put it into tuition or scholarship fund for their children. Who knows? Muammar Gaddafi money might be in America, they ain't been using it. Who knows? Who knows? Those African leaders that have been killed, they had their money saved in Western Bank. Who knows? Their money are the one they use for scholarship funds for their children. Is it the same money they use and send to Africa for aid to exploit us? It's the same money. Who knows? Now, do you wonder why they killed Gaddafi when he said he wants for Africa to have her own IMF in Africa? Well, Africa will be able to lend money to African nation with no interest or less interest. They kill him because they know it will take our money from their economy. So African leaders that put their money in American bank, or European bank, or the Swiss bank, when they get in, they have to go for those money. But if you don't bank that, you bank in Africa, they care you, your money will stay in Africa. So you understand. So that is why the narrator said the problem about Africa is because it's not because to say like, oh, no good leadership. They have the leadership there. Okay? But we do not have a unifying character. And that's what the narrator said. That unifying character, we don't have it. The unifying character is what Europe have. The unifying character is what North America have. The unifying character is what these colonialists have. We don't have it. We see each other as individual nation. I'm not part of Nigeria, Ghana, Niger, Burkina Faso. No. You must solve your problem. We solve our problem. When you get war on our side, that I'm not part of yours. But it's on the African continent. We do not want to, how they call it, do any trade between African nations. But we rather take it and send it to Europe. Then we feel we are on a global stage. We feel, oh, that is that America will recognize us. We feel that is that Europe will recognize us. Recognize it where? That's the problem of Africa. It must stop. We do not need European dollars. And this is where these people fool us. We do not need American dollars. They need us. We must understand they need our resources. We must understand if there was no resources in Africa, these people will have no tie to Africa to say, if anybody want to invest, or this is time to go to Africa to go invest, they would have no tie to Africa. But because of the African resources, that is what they want. We should understand that. There is nothing in Africa these people want but the resources. We should understand that. We should get that clearly. These people now calling you African, so-called African leader here, and they're having meeting with you because they love Africa, because they love you. They must love the black people in America first. They must love the African in America. They must love the African in Europe there. They must love the black people in Europe. They must love the black people in Australia. Understand the dynamic. Understand the dynamic. They don't love you in Europe. They don't love you in Australia. They don't love you in America. That Africa, they're going to love you. It's just like saying in the so-called Liberia, they go wrote history. They say they created Liberia as a place to carry free slave. And they gave all our history over time that Liberia was created to transport free slave. All right. If Liberia was created to transport free slave, why you deny Marco Garvey? Why did you deny the UNIE? Were they not free men and free women? Why you deny them from going to Liberia? When they wanted to go, why the FBI denied them? Were they not free men and women? Those are the kind of history they give us. But we take it nuts. We will put it into their faces. You guys are not serious. You guys are liars. We don't trust you. Once the colonizer will always be a colonizer. One oppressor will always be an oppressor. You think we don't know how the migration of people to Liberia came about? We know it. It did not come because we're talking about the 1820. If you love the people that you created Liberia for them, if you love them so much, 1822, then why you wait until 1865, you enter slavery? This was 1822, you said you create Liberia to carry these people there. Then why did you hold on to slavery until 1865? You see that kind of narrative they can't get to us. If you created Liberia to carry free slave, after you created Liberia, why you didn't just migrate all of them? Why didn't you migrate all of them to Liberia? Why did you hold the other people back here and still hold in captivity up to 1865? And then even after 1865, 1868, you came out with Jim Crow law to still strangle them. Then you say you love them. Is that how you show love? You can't trust these people. You can't trust them. They are not real. You can't trust these people. And we will not trust you. We are just letting you know we know the story. Can't lie to all. Liberia was created. You see how you create a place to carry these people, and then you go become governors. You enslave the people here, then you carry them Liberia, you enslave them, and so then become governor over them. They couldn't rule themselves. They couldn't create government system for themselves. They could have created a government system for themselves. But you went and become governor over them. And you said you created a place to transport free slave. We know how the whole free slave migration came about. It came about Virginia. When the people rose up against James Maroon to overthrow James Maroon. After they hit how they call it, Oliver Toussaint, succeeded in Haiti. So the people said, if Haiti can do it, we can do it too. That's how in Richmond, Virginia, the people mobilize themselves. If you read a Gabriel conspiracy theory, you will see it. They mobilize themselves to go against James Maroon, a brutal man. They wanted to kill him and assassinate him to overtake Richmond, Virginia, and to start a movement. But that's how it never succeeded. They caught those people. And at that time, who was the federal government? Thomas Jefferson. James Maroon notified Thomas Jefferson about the incident. And James Maroon told Thomas Jefferson, we should kill all of them that were in our coup. Thomas Jefferson said, no, we can't kill all of them. But what they did, they killed all the leaders. Thomas Jefferson, along with James Maroon, they killed all the leaders of that coup. And today they can't name our capital city, Monrovia, in honor of James Maroon. Who named it? I can tell anybody. It was not the slave that left from here that went to Liberia that named the capital city James, how they call it, in honor of James Maroon. If the same people James Maroon killed, their leaders, how would they go to Liberia and name the capital city of Liberia in honor of a slaveholder, James Maroon, the same man that tortured them, the same man that killed them, the same man that enslaved them? Why would these same people name the capital city in honor of this man, James Maroon? You see, that is why they gave us false history. And that's how Thomas Jefferson and James Maroon killed these people. And then the followers, it was the followers, some of the followers they took to Liberia. Because they said they did not want to keep these followers in America. And the thing we're talking about, then they can't lie to us, say it was ACS that created this. ACS came in last. In fact, ACS was not even in the picture. ACS was not in parliament, in Congress, when they were debating, oh, we have to send these rebellion slaves. They call them rebellion slaves. They didn't call them free slave. They said they wanted to take them out of the bull of America. They wanted to take them to the Philippines. What issue started from Haiti? They couldn't take them to Brazil. They decided to take them to Africa. And that's how they debated this thing in Congress for months. And they decided that we can take them to Liberia, or not Liberia at that time, but to Africa, because they said Great Britain was in Africa, in today's Sierra Leone, and to other places. Before the 1884 Berlin Conference, these people have already mapped and divided Africa. 1888 Berlin Conference was just an agreement to say, you know what, gentlemen, let us agree that If France, for example, got 14 or 15 nations, don't go there because France already in those areas. That was just the agreement it went for. If England had maybe 20 or 25 African area, like where it was settling, don't go there. Wherever you see France, don't go there. Everywhere you see England, do not go there. Anywhere you see Belgium, do not go there. That was what the 1883 Berlin Conference was for. But these people have already overtaken Africa before 1884. So that is why when they divided Africa, America was in a meeting. But America said she wouldn't have one area. She did not want to go to other places like the way England did it, France did it. So America felt that it was enough for her to just have today the place they call Liberia. So that's how when they divided Africa among themselves in 1884, when they went to Africa, they did not temper. France did not go to Liberia. France went all the way to Guinea, all the way to Africa. They did not come to Liberia. Great Britain was already in Sierra Leone while they couldn't come to Liberia. So they did a demarcation already. You think it was just the 100 or the 200 men that left from here were the people that the colonizers were afraid of? That, oh no, we have free slave over there. We don't want to go there. They're going to fight. No, it was American territory already. Even before that, America even have a flag on the soil. They can lie to us that they created a place to carry free slave, to carry day, to carry that. All those stories. It just made us indoctrinated and we lie. And then at the end, we hate ourselves and start putting this, that here. But if people want to, the UNIA were free slave. Why? The United States government stopped them from going to Liberia. Because Liberia was created for that place, for them. Why they didn't go there? Why you stop them from going there? Liberia was not created as a free slave. It was American colony and American territory. But it was expensive. So they used what they call settlers colonies to create Liberia. That is why America did not agree to Liberia independence until 1962. Even as she agreed to it, she only agreed because, hey, she still controls Liberia. What is the need of holding on to something that it makes no sense? Even if you say, okay, we agree to America independent, at the end of the day, who still control Liberia? Who still control Ghana? Who still control Kenya? It's still the same colonial master. It's still the same Great Britain. Who still control Nigeria? It's still the same Great Britain. Who does Nigerian leaders go to? The same Great Britain. Who the French leaders go to? The same French or the same France. So they say it makes no sense. We holding on to it because at the end of the day, they still come to us. We still control them. We still tell them what to do. To understand and actually look into history, don't just read. Digest what you read. Because when it comes to slavery, it was bad. When it comes to colonialism, it was bad. So you're going to read books that will be written not by black person or even some black person that are still bourgeoisie, like Obama. I dare you, Obama will read a book about slavery. He will tell you it was good. Obama will read a book about colonialism. He will still tell you there was something better about it. He will tell you, even though it was this, but there was something better. He will tell you, but there was something good that came from all of it. There was nothing, there can be nothing good out of, how do you call it, colonialism. There can be nothing that came that good out of slavery. But those people like Obama then, they will write, they will tell you, even though it was bad, but there was something good that came from all of it. You see it? But you go tell a Jewish man about the Jewish Holocaust. He say, even though this happened, but there was something good that came from out of it. You will see what it will do to you. You will see. How dare you go and read a book about the Jewish Holocaust and then say, even though this happened to the Jewish, but, the there was something good. No, but it is only African story that they will come and write, and some of these bourgeoisie will come and write and say, oh, slavery was bad, but we got something good. Colonialism was bad, but something good came from all of it. Nothing good came from all of slavery. Nothing good came from all of colonialism. We are still suffering the effects of slavery. How will you tell us something good came from all of it? We are still suffering the effect of colonialism. How will you tell us something good came from all of it? Maybe if we want to go the Jewish side, they got reparation. So if we are saying something good came from all of that, in terms of reparation, in terms of forgiveness or whatsoever, then maybe you can write a book and say it that way. But African people, what have we gotten? Nothing. Even an apology, nothing. Even up to today, we still live with that effect, with that stigma of being identified as slave, that stigma of being identified as colonizer, that stigma of being identified as Nigerian, Liberian, Ghanaian is a stigma. Stigma. And that unifying character, we don't have it yet in Africa. And that is why if we don't be careful, these same people will take Africa again and rule the world again. That's going to be another 400, 500, 600 years. So we're going to stop here because my battery has gone dead. So thank you for being on. I will see you guys tomorrow. This is today's presentation. So this is just the myth of Western aid to the African continent. So we have understand. So if any of you become leader tomorrow in Africa, you have already been educated that Western aid is a myth. Western aid in Africa is not helpful. Western aid in Africa is just a form of colonialism. It's just a form of enslavement. It's just a form of indoctrination. It's just a form of conditioning our mind. It's just a form of making us not to rise up, making us not to think beyond the box. It's just a form, making us not to. That's the reason why in Africa we suffer today. We don't produce food because of Western aid, because they tell where to spend this money. But tomorrow they will come to us and tell us Africa have the soil. Africa have fertile soil, good for crops, but we don't have it. You see it? So African leaders, it is clear. If you want to control the world, you're not fighting over Africa. The only thing you need is to come together. Period. You control the world. You rule the world. We once ruled the world, and it is coming back for we Africans to rule the world. If you want for America to rule the world, fine. When American representatives come on the African continent, take your resources, give it to them. Take your land right, give it to them. Take your birthright, give it to them. But they will never take their birthright and give it to you. You can never own land in America here. Any resources in America here, you African, come to America. America have all. But I dare you African, come to America and come tell America, we want to come own your land. We want to come own your oil. We want to come tell your oil. Come and see what I will tell you. In fact, not even the leader, but it is a citizen. It is a citizen that will put you in your place. Go to Europe. You think they don't have resources? Okay, go to Europe, even to England. All the diamond they are stolen from Africa, and they have reserve of it in the Buckingham Palace. Go there. Go there, you African leaders. Just go there and tell them these are African goals that you stole from Africa. We need part of it. And see what I will tell you. Just go there. Just go tell them. Ask them. Just tell them we need part of it. And you see what I will tell you. Then you sit down there and you allow these people come and tell you. Folks, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And I will see you guys Friday. Thank you.